Welcome back there. Welcome back. It's Sunday night. You've got me briefly until Dan is here. So I suppose really it's just habit that I started. I'll let you take over, Stephen.
Hello, welcome to that live call-in from That Millwall podcast. As Mickey said, it was supposed to be myself and Dan. Dan is currently on a train somewhere, so we're not quite sure how long he's going to be, what's happening. So you get to look at me and Mickey, and then after a while you get to have a look at me and Dan. Tonight we're going to be discussing the 1-1 draw with Birmingham from yesterday. I'll start with, I thought that was a good point, but we'll elaborate a little bit more. Also, just a little bit of housekeeping. We saw some comments on Twitter about whether this was going on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. We're currently, and the man that's currently to my left is working on a solution to getting it all together so we can go live across everything. We can get people calling in like what we were on Twitter. At the moment, we're not quite there. So we've found that YouTube we tend to have a little bit of success with that at the moment. Once we get it all up and running, then we'll have everything all singing and all dancing. Yeah,
the problem being is that the live broadcast platform, what we use to broadcast across all of you, hello Gaza, hope you're well, fella. The software what we use to broadcast across all platforms records for us, and we can get sound and we can get audio or both. The problem being is that we found in recent times when we do the extended shows, so like hour and a half, 2 hours on Twitter Space, they're fantastic shows, and we want to be able to put them out to as a podcast the following day. Because loads of people want it as podcast. The problem being is that I tried probably about 15 times with different bits of software to get the whole space, even through Twitter. And for some unknown reason, we could only get an hour of 20, not the 2 hours. So currently I'm working on a workaround to try and bring space to these live shows so that basically we can broadcast across Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, Twitter as video, and then basically incorporate space so that then we should be able to have you be able to call in from Twitter on Space, or you can come in using comments and everything else across Twitter. So hopefully very, very shortly, it's just extremely hard production wise to get a Twitter Space working on a live feed. And I think that's purely because Elon Musk has probably got video and Space is sort of working in. I am looking at Twitter does a live video feed and seeing if we can incorporate that. But the idea is we are looking to go live across all social platforms, including Instagram Live and TikTok Live, as well as the others. So bear with us. We're not meaning to upset anyone by not doing a space. It's just that this is easier for us to be able to get production wise, to be able to get the sound and then post it out for people as a podcast on a Monday morning, rather than not give them the full benefit of the full show. Because of that 2 hour show we did the other week was fantastic, and if we'd have only published an hour and 20 minutes of it, a lot of people would have missed some great parts of the show. And also we record live and we post live. We've always done that, and we don't want to start giving parts of shows or anything else, because it's just not really personally in what we are about as such. I think that's covered it, don't you, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, we're not trying to. We want to have as many people watching and engaging with us as possible. So we'll get everything as soon as we've got it all up and running. Then we'll have access all areas, as they say.
So yeah.
I was just say evening to Big E. I'm just going to try and get some of these comments on Kenny Johnson and Matt. I'll do a couple of these ones first. Danny, YouTube is better.
We will be on YouTube, Danny. We're not thinking of what we're looking to do is go on YouTube, but the people who listen on Twitter Space or you want to listen, if you want to come on, you're more than welcome to come on. We can send you a link and you can come on. But the problem is that you will have to, if you don't want to see your face, you'll have to cancel, not authorize your camera. And that scares a lot of people where suddenly they don't want to come on like that. But listen, you want to come on this, we can send you a link, we can post a link, we can send you a link, you can come on. We're not going to be on YouTube. We're aiming to go live, and we'll be pretty much one of the only podcasts out there what we'll be looking to go live across every single social platform we're on. So it will be a first, but it will definitely be it will definitely make us the most interactive podcast, so that you can comment, you can, if you want to have a space, come on. If you want to come on video, you can. You can send us voicemails if you want. We can play them. We're pretty much trying to open up every available option so that we can hear or listen to any of you at any point around the world. That's the aim, to be the number one most interactive podcast currently out there. But it's
There's a couple of comments. Jack and Mike, I'm not ignoring you, but I'm going to pop this one on first because I think it's absolutely superb. Tony, you are our follower of the week. Mickey has a face for radio and he still does it. So I quite agree, Tony, but hey, here we go. Moving on. Moving on before you get banned, Tony, and thrown off the show.
I don't care. Listen, at the end of the day, mate, I'm big enough to give it out. And because of that, then I'm big enough to take it. And listen, I've got one of those faces, mate, that only your mum loves, so I don't care.
Jack, I'll put your comment on. What did you think of the game? And Mike as well. Decent point away from home. Shame we couldn't get the win, but hey, a good point, which we all would have taken. I quite agree, Mike. I think before the game, there was a lot of people that probably would have gone to Birmingham, and with their start to the season, their signings, the Tom Brady effect, as everybody keeps mentioning, they're on a little bit of a high. We obviously come off the back of very late on Friday, not getting the deal for Kiefer Moore over the line. We can talk about that a bit later if need be, if anybody's got any comments on it. But obviously disappointing that the window ended a little bit the way that it did with that kind of deal collapsing. But they didn't really show. I don't think first half. Obviously took the lead early. Kevin Nisbet 2-2. I think we all knew that he was going to score goals given the opportunity. Mickey, before we move on about the game, we'll talk about Nisbet and how he scored the first goal. Free kick. I'm
not going to mention anything about Nisbet because the problem being is I get accused of jinxing it. So I'm just going to say cracking goal to the wee Scottish lad and carry on.
Okay, well, we've now been joined by Dan, who's currently looking down at his phone, probably checking his fantasy team because that's all he seems to be talking about at the moment, which we will come on to a little bit later. Dan, I will...
yeah. If you haven't seen that yet, go onto the Twitter and see the vote we posted last night, mate.
All right, we'll do it now. We'll do it now. No,
let's hold it because I think if we... I think the poll will near enough be finished by the time the show's done, so we'll come on to that at the end.
All right, fine. Well, Dan, 100%. I'll come to you, seeing as Mickey doesn't want to be a jinx. We were just about to...
I'll let you crack on. I'm going to leave.
Bye-bye.
Do you want me to stay for a minute? Do you want me to stay?
No, it's all right. Dan and I got it. It's all good.
All right, I'll stay for a minute then. Go on.
Kevin Nisbet, obviously 2-2, scored yesterday. But I want to talk to you guys. I want to ask you, Dan, about how he scored, because obviously Zian Fleming has been on the free kicks since he's joined the club. I know George Saville's taken a couple, but I think that may have been when Fleming wasn't on the pitch. Found it interesting that Nisbet was the one to line it up, but pay dividends with him finding the back of the net.
Well, it's nice that we actually have two decent free kick takers. Fleming's obviously put a couple in over the last year, but some of them have. Well, I say some of them. I feel like more of them than not have ended up over the crossbar. So it's nice for him to have a little bit of competition on the free kicks. And Nisbet probably caught the keeper off guard, putting it the goalkeeper's side because maybe the keeper should have done a little bit better. But I think overall, it's a great option to have the fact he's good on set pieces, and we've seen him score a few penalties as well. If you have someone that's good at set pieces, that's worth their weight in gold, especially to a team like us.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we carry on, I've just seen a comment. I'm assuming you mean Rowett, Danny. Get Rowett on one day. We would love to get the Millwall manager on this show. However, I think that the club hell would freeze over. You know, the That Millwall podcast panel will be, I don't know what will happen. We'll all become incredibly good looking before Gary Rowett's allowed to come on to the show. It would be great to interview him, but unfortunately, that's not gonna happen.
No, I'll tell you a question, a thingy there for you with the free kicks. If you remember last time, I put something in the group when they were on the last game, on the Stoke game, that there was a free kick. We won a free kick pretty much in the same sort of position, and for some unknown reason, Zion wanted it. Zion had the ball, picked the ball up, and Nisbet was arguing with him. I'll take it, and Zion would not let him at all. So I don't know if something's been dictated since that game in the back, because Zion didn't even attempt to get that ball. It was just Nisbet had it, Nisbet was going to take it, and Nisbet finished it. There didn't seem to be a to and fro like there was before, because Nisbet really did look to have the ump last time that he didn't get the ball.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Fleming's clearly... He was a free kick taker, the set piece specialist, if you will. He practices them before the game. He does all of that kind of stuff. I just found it really, really interesting that, a couple of games in and he's maybe he's been taken off them. Maybe Nisbet's been doing something in training. I don't know. But it now makes you think that come the next game or the next time we get a free kick, Fleming's not going to get a look in. Nisbet scored the last one. You're going to have to give him an opportunity to keep taking them. I just thought, great goal. I think Nisbet, I'll come on to a comment in a minute that I've just seen pop up, but I think Nisbet is looking to be the kind of signing that we hoped he would be, scoring goals.
100%. I think Nisbet, I think he's showing those skills and he's showing that hunger. And again, I think, his whole potential, his whole reason for coming to us was to put himself firmly in the shop window. I think that's not just him. I think there's a few players that have done that. But Zian, realistically, you didn't really notice he was on the pitch on Saturday, did you? I think there was one bit where I think he'd done a block or something where you suddenly went, there's Fleming. But other than that, you didn't really notice him on the pitch, did you?
Well, that leads us on to the comment that's on the screen at the moment from Matt. Boys, went yesterday. Predictable row at football. Great first half with 2 up top, then safe subs, and in brackets, wrong subs, in my opinion. Please, I'd like yours views on why both Fleming and Mitchell not being subbed. Dan, I will come to you on that in a second, but I think the subs yesterday were very, very strange. I think Norton Cuffy, that was an obvious one. He was on a booking and perhaps looked a little bit tired, so I can understand why that sub was made. But Mitchell, Fleming, they're not really, or the last couple, they haven't really got involved in the game. And I think the subs is an interesting one. Obviously, we were forced into one with Hutchinson going off. Dan, do you think perhaps yesterday the fact that Hutchinson went off and we had to make that sub perhaps threw Rowett off of his game a little bit in terms of making changes?
Yeah, I think as a manager, you kind of assess how the game's going, and then to lose, I know obviously you get 5 subs these days, but to lose one of them so early on in the game's obviously going to potentially impact your game plan for the entire for the rest of the game. So I think it did kind of throw Rowett a little bit. As you said, I'm not surprised. Sorry, Norton Cuffy's gone off. Obviously, probably hasn't played too much in pre-season. On a booking, we obviously know how card happy the referees are so far this season. I completely get that. I think Mitchell, he splits opinion in the fan base. I think he's really good, but obviously probably hasn't started maybe quite where we want him to be at the minute. But maybe bringing in Campbell will give him a little bit more of a kick. There's plenty of competition now in that centre mid areas. And, I suppose I feel like if maybe he didn't have to take Hutchinson off, maybe his other sub might have been Imaku for Fleming. But that probably threw him. I suppose maybe he left Zian on because he might think, Zian might have that one moment of magic in him. He hasn't shown it this season. There's plenty of times last season where, the ball would just kind of drop at his feet and he's kind of almost 12 yards out, or, that goal against Rotherham, for
Mhm.
example. Sometimes he just needs kind of one moment, and Rowett was maybe hoping he might have got that one moment in the dying moments of the game, with possibly the game a little bit more stretched.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's really easy. I think Fleming has, I don't want to say he's got a target on his back, but the pressure on him and the focus on him at the moment is very, very apparent. We as fans, we're expecting a lot from him. And guys in the comments, please feel free to share your opinions on Zian at the moment. But do you think that Rowett's perhaps a little bit blinded by the fact that he's looking to try and give Fleming his moment to kickstart the season, when there potentially could be better options available?
He possibly is, yeah. It kind of took Zian last season. Obviously, had the injury, and then came into the team, was being played out on the wing. He didn't get into the game really, into the team really, so until the international break last season. And then obviously he got his first goal on the 17th of September last season, which was against Blackpool. I don't need to probably tell most people who are listening in at the minute who we're going to be playing on the 17th of September this season. So I'm hoping, lightning might strike twice there. But Fleming, on his day, is a quality player. Started last season slowly. Maybe it might be a case of that again. Obviously, Rowett said not that long ago he has had his head turned a little bit, but I feel like Rowett had his arm obviously a little bit twisted with the early substitution. I do feel like if he'd have had that fifth sub, probably would have taken Fleming off like he has done in a couple of games so far this season, and brought Amaku on for a bit more kind of pace and direct running.
Yeah, and obviously Tony's CF has had an invisibility cloak on for weeks, to be honest. I do see where people are coming from with that, because we are expecting a little bit more from him. But as you say, I think, as you say, he started slow last year. The speculation has obviously not helped. Maybe the 17th of September can be that omen again this year. Who knows? Perhaps that's us wishful thinking because it's Leeds. I will come back to another comment, but this has just come in on Fleming. Fleming was an unknown last year, and opposition didn't know too much about him. This year, the opposition have found him out and target to take him out of the game. Yeah, I do agree with that. I can, most teams have got a star player or a better player, and he is, well, clearly from last year was ours, and maybe teams are targeted. Yeah, so I do agree.
Can I just jump in on that quickly, Stephen? Yep. I completely agree with the comment. Obviously, last season he was our Stardust quality player. That kind of gives the opportunity, if the opposition are focusing on Fleming, for people like Nisbet, like SA, like Amaku, whoever's playing up the top end of the pitch, to maybe go under the radar a little bit and become that person if it's not going to be Fleming as much this season. And secondly, the best players, they always rise above it. You look at Haaland in the Premier League. I know obviously comparing Haaland and Zian Fleming might seem like a little bit crazy, but you look at him, teams will try and double and triple mark Erling Haaland, man mark him. There's going to definitely be a case of that where Fleming's going to fall into that bracket this season. The best players rise above that. So, the Fleming does need to try and rise above it.
Mm-hmm. No, I quite agree. And I think at a club like Millwall, with the expectation of the fans as well, it's something that he's going to have to get used to and try and come through the other side. The last little bit on Fleming, a comment here from John, give him a 5-game break. Who knows? Maybe a spell out of the team to maybe... You don't know how players are always going to take it. Is it going to motivate them? Is it going to annoy them? But maybe that's something to look at. Moving on, the next phase of the game, there was a comment that I did put up from Alex, which I will come back to, but it kind of goes along the same lines. Mike has come in, the next sort of thing that happened in the game, if I can get this up. So what about the new corner kick routine? Long ball out to Lenny and boom, makes a change from the ball to Cooper. Now, obviously, this is in reference to the disallowed goal yesterday, which would have made it 2-0. Firstly, Dan, do you think it was rightly or wrongly disallowed? Or, another way to put it, did they take too long to decide to disallow it?
They definitely took too long. The fact Cooper has put his arm up and he's the one wheeling away in celebration, it's quite clear that Cooper's touched it. The linesman, we've got the way they want the game to be officiated, the linesman has to be bang on it now. So if he thinks he's offside, he has to put his flag up. We don't have VAR in this league, despite what the club app and BBC Sport apps were telling us yesterday. We don't have VAR in this league, so we have to just get on with it. He definitely took too long to make his decision. On the replay, he does look just offside. But, you know, I think that corner kick routine, I was actually just on the train home. I've been out to watch the football today. I was just on the train with my mate, who's another Millwall fan. I was just saying to him, it was actually quite nice not to see the traditional back post cross to Cooper in amongst 3 or 4 of our players. It kind of switched up a little bit. And, you know, Leonard may only strike a volley like that, you know, kind of maybe 1 in 10 times, but he does have that rocket strike on him. We've seen it a couple of times. So I think it's good to keep that up your sleeve. And it's also good to leave a player like Ryan Leonard on the edge of the box, because he is quite quick. If we lose the ball and a counter-attack starts, he's someone you want chasing back.
Well, that actually leads me on very, very nicely to, it's almost as if we planned this, Dan, to the next comment. That new centre-back we signed is mustard, Ryan Leonard or something. Now, I'm going to say it because I have been pro Ryan Leonard for quite a while. And I know not everybody has. I know his fitness divides opinions, and should he have been offered a deal? Are we going to get enough games out of him? But what you just said there, Dan, was absolutely bang on. If he's in the team, he is capable of getting back, and he's got the strength in his body and his legs to get back, to try and, you know, if we're under the cosh, if he's, you know, in a foot race, he seems to be able to catch up with opposition strikers. We saw it against Swansea. We've seen it on other occasions last season and again this year. If we can keep him fit, I think that arguably could be one of the best pieces of business we've done over the transfer window in the summer, because we clearly wasn't going to sign another centre half, and we've kind of looks to be we've pinned all our hopes on him.
Yeah, we'll come back onto the defence as a whole later on, because there is probably for me 2 big talking points in the defence. So we'll come on to that once we've finished kind of dissecting the game. But, you know, Ryan Leonard, if you can keep him fit, he's a brilliant defender. I actually saw a tweet yesterday about Rowett playing players out of position and, you know, almost trying to shoehorn him in. Well, I don't think that with Ryan Leonard. You know, I watch him at centre back and think, you know, he's played there for a while. You know, you wouldn't know that he probably hasn't played there his entire career. He's very good there, and the best managers do find ways of getting players into the team, even if it isn't in their conventional position. Like, look at, sorry, I'm going on with the Man City comparisons here. We're nothing like Man City, but it's just the first thing that's popping into my head. Look at Pep converting John Stones into a CDM. You wouldn't know that Stones has never played defensive midfield for most of his career, and he looks absolutely faultless when he plays there. So, you know, it's great that Ryan Leonard has been that guy so far this season to be able to fill in at centre-back for us. And, you know, he does look really mustard there.
No, absolutely. Guys, obviously we're trying to catch up with some of the comments. Obviously, there's a few that have come through about Zian Fleming. I don't disagree with some of the comments. I think, you know, are we utilising him as well? Perhaps. What we'll do with Fleming, we'll park that for one moment. We'll come back to that. I say we'll carry on sort of going through the game, and then we'll come back to some kind of questions and other things. Shortly after the disallowed goal, when I saw it, I'm still not convinced by what I'm going to talk about. But obviously, Sarkic was adjudged to have brought down the was it Hogan? I think Anderson that sort of broke past Cooper into the box. Personally, I didn't think he touched him. I still don't. Some people say that he did, and that's football. It's opinions. Dan, was it a penalty for you?
Yeah, but it's one the striker's gone looking for, and he's got it. I think that's the crux of the matter. You know, that's the way, you know, strikers in that situation. Anderson's going away from the goal once he's gone round Sarkic. He's running out of space. He's going to be looking for that in that situation. If I'm Anderson in that situation, 100%, I'm going to try and do exactly what he's done there. And, you know, that time he's pulled it off perfectly. There'll be another time where he tries to do it this season. He gets a yellow card for diving. Simulation.
Yeah. Well, whether you think it was a penalty or whether it wasn't, it was given. In my opinion, I think Sarkic was hard done by. In Dan's opinion, he wasn't. But upstepped. I think Hogan did step up to actually take the penalty. And was saved by Sarkic. I think personally is a massive boost for his confidence, and I think it's a massive boost for the defence confidence, because I was trying to think about this the other day. I never really had much faith in George Long. I don't think there was many penalties given against us. But you
No,
never.
I
I
can't
mean, I know
remember
I'm not going to turn this into a George
any.
Long bashing again.
Yeah,
We've done that enough
we've
on
done
this.
that many times. Yeah,
We've done that enough on this show. But it just gives you a bit of confidence that if you do concede a penalty, you've got a goalkeeper in there that is capable of saving them. And I was really pleased for him that he did.
yeah. Sarkic, there's been, maybe a little bit of criticism of him so far. He's still settling into the team. Hopefully, this international, well, I think he's actually going away on international duty, but maybe, he's then had quite a few games behind this defence. Hopefully, he kind of settles down a little bit, understands how we want to play. We understand a bit more how he wants to play. But, maybe the fact he also played for Birmingham a couple of years ago, remembers where Hogan likes to put his penalties, might have gone in his favour a little bit for this one. But, can't discredit it. A penalty, generally a penalty save is always a good save. And while it wasn't right in the corner, it was still down low. He had to get down low and, yeah, made a good save. And then again, that man, Ryan Leonard, came in with another great block on the rebound.
Absolutely. And obviously that took us in 1-0 at half time. And I actually thought probably, whilst I thought it was an okay first half, I thought we played all right. We obviously took the lead. Could have been 2-0 up on another day. That's not giving us offside. You got a penalty save, 2-0 half time. You take it. Birmingham, much like Stoke, I think, last week, come out in the second half, and I just think that they had a little. I think they'd had a bit of a rocket. Let's be honest. I think they'd probably had a few words from their manager, and come out and, to be fair, were probably the better side in the second half.
Yeah, I would
not.
Go on, Stephen.
I was going to say not. I'm not saying they were necessarily. I don't. It wasn't sort of a bombardment as such, but I think they just seem to be quicker to the second balls. They tend to. They just look a better unit than what we did in the second half.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly go back to the penalty, and we touched obviously on Sarkic. He was the one who gave it away. And that's what I picked up on. A little bit the communication between him still getting to know the defenders with Cooper. There has been times where Sarkic came charging out his goal and hasn't dealt with it. There was obviously a little bit of lapse of communication there between him and Cooper for the penalty. I'm with Alex. Comment on screen there. It is a penalty, unfortunately. But I'm quite glad to have played Birmingham and Stoke quite early on in the season, because I think they've probably, in my opinion, have the two best windows in the league, to be completely honest with you. I think the business both clubs have done has been very good. And if there's a time to play teams that have had very good windows, it probably is quite early on in the season while the players are still trying to gel a little bit. That may be, I think that's something that probably has gone in our favour. But yeah, they came out for the second half. They came at us, had a little bit of a rocket, and and obviously we'll come on to that in a second. But I thought Stansfield, his movement was brilliant and took his goal very, very well.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what happens when clubs are bringing in these sort of. He was quite highly sought after, I think, by a few clubs. I think there was even a talk that there was half a mention that we were kind of sniffing around, but we're never really gonna. Yeah, we were never.
There was one article I remember saying there was about 5 clubs interested in him, and it was QPR, us, and Sunderland, and then he's ended up at Birmingham. So I think he was a very good player in League One last season. He's going to probably go on and have a very decent career, you would imagine. And let's not turn this into a Jay Stansfield praise session, but as I said, I think he took it very well. He left Sarkic with very little chance, putting it right into the side netting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just put up a few comments. There are a few that I will come back to, guys. There's a couple of points that I do want to discuss a bit later on, but we're going to go for a couple just because we're talking about the game. We were better last season than we are this season. It looks like when we go 1 up, then it's total backs to the wall to hold out. To follow up with that, obviously, I think Jonathan has carried on and said it's worrying that when we go 1-0 up, we retreat back and try to hold out instead of getting another goal. Another comment here. I thought our fitness looked poor in the second half from John. And one finally, just on a similar subject, Mill have historically been a second half team, but this season so far it seems we're a first half team, which brings into question a level of fitness. A couple of weeks ago, Dan, Nigel Pearson, the Bristol City manager, made an interesting comment that, and his exact words, I'm not sure, but it was something along the lines of, "We knew we were fitter than them." And that to me was a little bit worrying, that 2 games in, first home game, obviously our first home game of the season, second game of the season in the league, that the opposition manager is looking at us and instantly realising that perhaps that he has a fitter squad than us. I do agree with the guys. It is worrying that we're seemingly going 1-0 up and going defensive. I think that's a Gary Rowett tactic. We have seen that quite a lot over the last few years. But we don't look as good when we're trying to hold on to a 1-0 lead. And the fitness levels perhaps is something that we need to look at. Is that an easy cop-out, or is there something legitimately in that, do you think?
Well, if another manager's saying it, then there's definitely got to have to be something in it. You know, Pearson's a manager that's been round the block. He's a very experienced manager. You know, while he's probably not up there with the top tacticians in this league, you know, he's still been around and done his thing. He clearly knows what he's on about. And for him to say that is very concerning. And, you know, yeah, we do kind of look like we kind of run out of a bit of huff and puff. Maybe that's a case of us probably not having as much of the ball as we want to, or as we'd like us to. You know, if you're in control of the ball in possession, you know, then we have the ball, we're relaxed, we know what we can do with it. Unfortunately, in the second half, it's a bit more kind of hit and hope usually. You know, and as long as Rowett's our manager and we're playing 5 at the back, I think the second we go 1 goal up, we probably are going to be used to sitting back. There would be times last season where if we were playing a 4, you know, we'd get that goal and then we'd probably push on and, you know, try and go for the kill with the second and third. But it doesn't really feel like that's going to happen as much this season.
No. And again, what you said there leads on to that comment from Speed Demon. The reason we look knackered in the second half is because we spend all game chasing the ball. We can't string 2 passes together, movement non-existent. For me, I've been very vocal on social media, on the pod, about our transfer window and how I don't think we have enough personally in the squad. I think we're a couple light still. However, the one area that we seem to have an abundance of players is in the centre of midfield. And I think that we are going to look like we're struggling for fitness in the middle of the park because we are only ever going to have two men in there. Because the way that we play with Fleming just off of the front 2, they're kind of the attackers, the wing backs, you know, support. So a 2-man midfield, more often than not, we're going to be coming up against a 3-man midfield. And I think that's why we've gone down the route we have with having so many central midfielders, because we're going to ask the likes of Denore, Mitchell, Saville, Campbell, even Honeyman, perhaps when he comes back, that they're going to have to do a lot of running. It's unfortunate. Campbell's only just joined us. We don't know how much football he's played. Denore's had an injury, so we have been I mean, I think Romain Esse come on yesterday, didn't he? And was playing virtually in centre mid. He did
play there in pre-season a little bit.
Yeah, he did, but I think yesterday was more out of the fact that Denore probably wasn't fit enough to come on, and we literally had to make a change in the middle. I just think that our midfield, they're gonna have to seriously work on their fitness levels because they're going to be asked to do an awful lot of running this year.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to a point Omar said on a pod a few weeks ago about the 5-3-2 we're currently playing at the minute, and I think the 5-3-2 Gary Rowett wants to play. I think Gary Rowett wants to play a 5-3-2, but instead of having an attacking midfielder, he probably wants to have a defensive midfielder in there and then have 2. I think he's probably ideal midfielders to probably have Billy Mitchell at the base and then have Casper one side and then either Campbell or Denore. Campbell or Saville the other side of him. I think that's what Gary Rowett wants to set up.
Mm-hmm.
He's played it a little bit when he's been our manager, particularly in the lockdown season. I think that's how he wants to set us up, and you know that doesn't really excite me because you're already playing with 5 defenders, and then you're chucking another defensive-minded midfielder in, and Campbell's. If he does play like that, Campbell's a bit more defensive-minded. Saville these days is a bit more defensive-minded. So I think if you do that, you're really asking more of the 2 up top. So maybe that's why Gary Rowett has brought in 3 centre midfielders.
Perhaps, but then you have the Zian Fleming conundrum, don't you? Because if you play with 3 central midfielders and you're going to play with 2 strikers,
but I think he'll do what he did with Jed Wallace and put Jed up top in the 2.
Yeah, perhaps he will with Fleming, but then again, you've got Bradshaw.
Bradshaw and Nisbet, whoever's going to play up top, you're going to leave them massively isolated because we know Fleming's going to try and probably drop a little bit deeper and get the ball. Fleming won't want to have, 90 minutes of Cooper diagonals punted towards his head, is he?
No, and that's the concern that I would have with Fleming playing up front.
And quickly before we move on,
yeah.
I'm just going to add, and this is another thing we're going to come back to later. If the Nor isn't fit enough to come on, why are we putting him on the bench? Please, just we're going to come back to this later. But where's Adam Malachi?
Yeah, well, this Tunbridge MFC has just made a point. I'm going to have to say, be it Norton, Cuffy, and Brian are not defenders. Is the comment for the benefit of those listening on a podcast. I think it's too early to judge both of them. I can see where they're coming from with Norton Cuffy, because I think defensively, I don't think his game is quite as good as perhaps what Danny Max is defensively. But he's in the team to be a wing back, so he's going to be judged on going forward, I think, personally. And that's why Ryan Leonard playing on that right-hand side is going to help him, because he's going to have cover there. On the left-hand side, Adam Malachi, he seems to be forgotten about. No one was talking about him, potentially leaving the club. I mentioned it a couple of times, and I saw a couple of people sort of say, get him some experience. But he wasn't named in the squad. And when your first choice left wing back in Brian is injured, you'd think that he would at least have been there as some form of cover. I don't really know what the plan is with him, to be honest with you, because are they going to give him game time? Do they think much of him? Where do they go with him now?
I'm very confused. I think we probably should have given him a run out in the Carabao Cup game against Reading, just to find out really if he, based off that Reading performance, I don't know whether it would have been much different if he was in there, just to find out really whether he was much cop in men's football, and just say, look at him and go, this is where he's at. He can either be very, good cover for Brian this season when he's injured, and unfortunately so far it's looking like Brian might be injured a bit more than we potentially thought when he signed, which is slightly concerning. And if he isn't quite at that level, okay, let's get him out on loan to National League, League Two, whatever we think his level is, get him playing regular football so he can develop whatever parts of his game he needs to develop. I'm just very baffled as to why Murray Wallace, who we know, he's always tried his hardest. I think his best days might be slightly behind him now, but why are we still putting him out at left wing back? I mean, we need to build the bloke's confidence up a little bit. Let's not put him down at left wing back and kind of shoot him down even more.
Absolutely. And just a couple of comments, and then we'll wrap up the game and then come on to the points that we were going to discuss. I think last two games we haven't played a five at the back. It's been 3-4-1-2. Wing backs have been so much higher up. Yes, I agree. I think Joe Bryan and Norton Cuffy are out and out wing backs. They're not full backs. So their job is going to be get further up the field, get crosses into the box, be part of the attack. So I think that's what Rowett has wanted. That's why Malone was brought in last year. It obviously didn't quite work out, and we changed the system. And that's why Danny McNamara was kind of not forced, but they tried to get him into that wing back role to try and mould him that way. Not quite worked, but there's still time for him.
I think Rowett's going to be a lot more reluctant now to go to four at the back this season, having them as his fullback choice. So I think Brian's played in a four for a lot of his career, so I think Rowett will probably be okay putting him there. If he does want to go to a four, obviously then there has to be a discussion about Norton Cuffy, because as we've picked up on, maybe defensively he isn't quite as good as Danny. So is there maybe the conversation then to have Brooke Norton Cuffy, who's going to be playing maybe on the right midfield, and then Danny right back, or one of them at right back and the other one on the bench.
And this is for me why we need to play four at the back, given it gives us so much more options in forward areas. We are playing five to accommodate Brian and now Norton Cuffy, who, let's face it, are not the best defenders. Again, I don't want to go in too much on them defensively. I do think I can see why those are the kind of opinions and the comments, and I do agree that they're definitely being played for their attacking output rather than their defensive work, and that's what wing backs are. I'm going to do a Dan now. I'm not going to compare us to Man City, but I'm going to talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold. Let's be honest, gets absolutely caned on Sky, in the press, on social media, that he can't defend, and that we all know that he's always out of position. But he's played because of his attacking outlet, and Liverpool have always had midfielders and defenders that can cover him. That's it's only in recent years that they haven't had that cover that he's been really, really suspect. And I think that's what Rowett wants for us. He wants Norton Cuffy to be up the pitch. He wants Brian to be up the pitch. He doesn't want them back defending too often. Yeah, they have to do it. And yes, perhaps when we go 1-0 up, he'll go, right, Murray Wallace on you go, Danny McNamara on you go, and we'll be a bit tighter at the back. But I'm not going to be judging them on their defensive output as wing backs. If they're not contributing going forward, then we have a little bit of a problem. But I think that's perhaps what we need to be, where we need to be judging them. Back to the game, obviously after Birmingham come out, Jay Stansfield scored. It did feel a little bit like a typical Gary Rowett, let's play for a point. The Gary Rowett masterclass picture that we seem to send on everything, that anything that comes up Millwall related at the moment. Rowett come out and said, didn't he, that first half we were probably the better side, second half they were the better. He was satisfied with a point. I think the 900 or so that went up there probably would have taken a point beforehand. Overall, whilst it's not the most entertaining football, we've gone into the international break picking up 4 points from 6. It's not that bad, is it?
No, and I think obviously off the back of Norwich, if we'd have came out of this run with just 1 out of 6 or 0 out of 6, then I think there would be a huge amount of pressure on Gary Rowett over this international break, especially given, another point we'll come on to very shortly, the centre-back position now and other bits and bobs around our window. So, it's important to get to get them 4 points. And, we're sitting in mid-table at the minute. I put us I put us maybe, tilting towards the playoffs before the season started. I'm probably looking a bit more now kind of towards a mid-table finish, probably where we are actually sitting around at the minute after 46 games. But we're still very early on. I feel like at the second international break, you probably get a lot clearer of an indication where teams are going to be. So I'm not going to rush into saying we're going to be a mid-table nothing season this season, but I'm scaling back my expectations a little bit from our preview video.
Alex, do you know why we named 2 keepers on the bench at Norwich? I think it was. We did name 2 keepers. I think we were struggling with injury. I think Brian didn't play in that game, and we hadn't.
No Casper.
Yeah, no Casper. There was a few issues.
Signed, yeah, but I'm going to say it again. Where was Adam Malachi?
I'm not sure if he made the bench on that one.
He didn't make the bench.
Oh, he did. Okay, there we go. And that's it. This is it.
Even just having him as part of the match day squad will be a fantastic experience for him that he could probably learn a lot from. Being out on the pitch, doing the warm up, doing the halftime stretches, doing a cool down. It'll be a fantastic learning experience for him.
Absolutely. I think, he's done it with a lot of the youngsters. It just seems strange with this one that he's not. That's one of the topics we were going to discuss tonight, guys. And again, all your opinions, we'll come back to some comments and please feel free to agree or disagree with us on this. The comment that's coming from Alex here, Barrett was a centre-back, Rowett and Robinson were full-backs. This should be bread and butter to them. On that subject, Dan, our transfer window in regards to defensive recruits and perhaps where we are now as a defensive unit, we've all had the worry, we've all had the comments, we've all spoke about what happens if Sean Hutchinson or Ryan Leonard pick up an injury. Lo and behold, the day after the transfer window, what happens?
Yeah, we all knew it was going to happen at some point, and now obviously the two massive concerns now are that 1, this Sean Hutchinson injury is going to be a fairly long-term injury, and 2, Ryan Leonard's going to go and do something in, the week we're back after the international break. We've got 3 games in the next week, so it's going to be a lot for Ryan Leonard to potentially play 270 minutes of football, but with the added time, probably looking at closer to 300 minutes of football. That's going to be a lot for him to put on his body that week. So, and Rowett said, we have 5 centre-backs. So, if we play a 3, we have 2. And if we play a 4, we have 3 spare centre-backs. That's why we don't need one. Well, lo and behold, yesterday, Hutchinson's gone off, and all of a sudden, our 4 other centre-back choices are all on the pitch at the same time.
Yeah, and look, I actually thought Harding, I thought he was okay.
I thought he was okay as well.
Yeah,
didn't set the world alight, but, he looks like he could be a solid option for us. We've picked him up on a free. If he continues like that, I won't be he's probably not going to set the world alight, but I think on a free, it's probably a decent option while Oakley's out on loan, gaining a bit of experience.
And Alex Mitchell as well.
And Alex Mitchell, of course, yeah.
I think Hardy. Well, now it appears that there's a strong possibility that he's going to probably get a lot of first team football. Obviously, we don't know the extent of Hutchinson's injury. It might just be, a couple of weeks, but whatever it is, he may not be ready to play against Leeds in 2 weeks' time. We don't know. He might be fine, and then, panic over for now. But I actually thought it was quite good for Harding to come on and actually get proper game time, not just 5 minutes at the end, not just a cameo, just to shore us up a little bit. He had to play for over an hour, plus your injury time, and get used to his teammates and playing in the style of football that Rowett wants him to play into. And as you say, never going to set the world alight. I think it's pretty difficult at centre half to set the world alight, truth be told. But our lack of or Gary Rowett's comments of we don't need another centre back could our worst fears could potentially be becoming a real possibility. And Dan, again on the transfer market, I'm sure the viewers and listeners will be gutted to have seen George Evans leave the club for Wrexham, the Peckham Pirlo, as he'd been dubbed, but he could play at centre half, which was another option there. And it just, we all know it. We've all said it. It really could come back and bite us, couldn't it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pick up on something I've seen on Twitter today. It was the Stoke City manager, Alex Neil, or it came from a local Stoke press saying that they're looking into signing a centre-half who's a free agent at the minute. Why could we not look into that? A couple of names that I've seen touted about. Axel Tuanzebe, he spent last season on loan at Stoke. He's just been released from Manchester United. He's, a defender that's also had his injury problems, but on his day, he's a very, very good Championship centre-half. You got Craig Cathcart, who's very experienced at this level, a bit older, probably only looking at maybe bringing him in on a short-term basis, which maybe not be ideal. Tuanzebe is a little bit younger. And the third one, I think, might be slightly out of our wage bracket and also, again, slightly on the older side is Phil Jones.
No, stop. No.
But,
no.
No, I'm not gonna say let's bring in Phil Jones. But no, listen, if Hutchinson's injury is going to be long term, then I think there may have to be a case for us to bring in another centre back, because Leonard's probably going to do something at some point. We're down then to a bare free all of a sudden, and then let's say, I don't know what Harding's injuries record like, but say as if he then goes and does something, because that would be sod's law. The fact we've already got two out and we play a formation with three centre halves. All of a sudden, then we're at the point, who do you then put in there? Do you put Danny Mack in there? Do you ask one of the midfielders to step in at centre back? Do we change formation? I don't know. So if Hutchinson's injury is a long-term thing, I wouldn't mind maybe dipping into the free agent market as well. Obviously, you have to think about squad registration, but I'm pretty certain due to their ages, Esan and Maku don't actually have to be registered. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think because they're under 21, they don't.
Yeah, perhaps. I think they're cast as the young, like youth players.
I'm pretty certain SA doesn't. I don't know about Amaku because obviously we've signed an academy graduate.
Yeah, I think SA definitely, because he's 18. I think he certainly falls into that category. Luke, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Chris, one of our regulars. Can they get Alex Mitchell back? I'm under the impression that I think we can only call him back in January.
I think so. That's how most loan deals work, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think we have an early recall on that. I'm not sure. We need another centre back. Coops, Wallace, Harding, nobody else. Again, Carl, as we were saying, we agree. Perhaps we're going to dip into, as Dan said, dip into the free agent market. But again, you are limited really, because if you're a free agent now, it's likely that you're probably someone that other clubs don't particularly fancy, but we may have no choice. I don't know. Dan, you beat him to it. There's a lot about contract players looking for a contract. Again, we don't know what conversations, we don't know how bad Sean Hutchinson's injury may or may not be. He may be fine. It might just be a knock. He's out for a week, comes back to training the week before the Leeds game, plays and happy days. But I certainly think it was something that we would look into. There's another comment that's just come through here. His comments doesn't mean we didn't go for a centre-back. Did he say we was going for another striker? He is not going to announce to the world what we are after. Mill will do their business on the quiet. They do, Tunbridge MFC, they do. However, we're basing our information on what Richard Cooley tweeted out and what was apparently said by Gary Rowett and Steve Kavanagh at the fans forum. The comment from Richard was that Millwall weren't going to sign a centre-half. And when he was asked personally at the fans forum, I'm led to believe that his response was, we have enough there and George Evans can play at centre-half. Now, we know that George Evans left us on the last day of the transfer window, which may have been not enough time to try and find a suitable centre-back replacement. I don't know. But all of the talk from Millwall and all of the reliable sources that obviously where we get our information from suggests that Rowett was never, ever in the market for another defender after the signing of Wes Harding. Yeah.
Rowett's comments on the article Rich Cooley put out on deadline day was that if we play 3, we've still got 2 spare. If we play 2, we have 3 spare. As I said, we had all 4 of our potential centre-half options on the pitch yesterday. I would maybe be inviting free agents to come and train over the international period. I'm sure the youth team will have some games as well that we could maybe, give them a run out in. So let's see what happens. I'd personally be on the phone to Axel to Anzebe if Hutchinson's injury is a little bit serious, and seeing where that goes from there.
I completely agree. And again, Tunbridge, Cooley did say he wasn't signing Sarkic. Again, we're only going on, as I say, Rowett said himself at the fans forum that it wasn't a position they were looking to strengthen. I know Millwall are a club that put out a lot of smoke screens. They do a lot of business behind closed doors. It's always undisclosed. We may be wrong. We don't fully know. We're only going on the information that we have. And again, Alex, I agree. I think we did put all our eggs in Kiefer Moore on deadline day. I think the signings, obviously, of Campbell and Longman were done, I think, the day before. It was just a formality. We were waiting for everything to go through with Evans and Boggy before they were announced. And I think on the day he did, and I genuinely believe Rowett and the club, they thought he was coming. I really, really do.
Yeah. So, I think maybe we maybe did try and sign a centre-half. Maybe we tried for a Premier League loan and maybe we weren't getting anywhere. Maybe that's why they knocked that one on the head. But, there was obviously the rumour about Callum Styles, and Rich Cooley came out and said it was very, very unlikely. I'm actually just going to pick up on a comment from one of the local Barnsley journalists who said, the Barnsley manager said after their game yesterday on Callum Styles, as you can imagine, there have been lots going on in the last 2 days. Callum Styles wasn't in their match day squad, but when Callum comes back from international duty, he'll be fully committed to Barnsley. If he continues his training performances, I'm sure he'll find himself featuring. It was my decision. Now, we was under the impression from Rich's tweet that Styles wasn't going to be someone we was after. But maybe we were after him. Maybe again it was a little bit of a smokescreen kind of move from the club. If Styles was potentially available again, I would have loved to have had him back.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it would have solved the issues that perhaps we would have had in the squad, but I certainly think it would have been a player that a good player to bring in.
What wouldn't have actually surprised me, obviously, I know Campbell was linked to us before, and obviously when he left Motherwell, he went to Luton. It wouldn't surprise me, obviously, the club had talks with him, and then maybe, the club have kept in contact and he kept his agent's number and stuff. And then obviously his agent has obviously found out Luton have signed a couple of midfielders and Campbell's not going to be playing. Maybe he's got back on the phone to Aldridge and gone, if you're not getting Styles, then, Campbell's going to be available for a loan if you boys are still interested in him. And then obviously we've ended up with him signing on deadline day.
Absolutely. Connor, how long is Hutch out for? We don't know. Nothing's been announced just yet. We're hoping, like everyone, I think that it's short term, but right now we don't know. Carl, why did we let Alex Mitchell leave on loan? Personally, and again, this is just my opinion, I don't think Gary Rowett quite thinks he's ready for Championship football. I get the feeling that when you read the comments that Rowett has made, it just screams that get him out on loan, get him playing, first team football, get him some more experience. That's what I read from it anyway.
And I don't mind that. If a player's not going to play with us, I'd rather they went out on loan. To go back to Adam Malachi, National League don't have a transfer window. Maybe they're going to be looking at getting him out on loan in the next few weeks to a National League club if he isn't going to be someone who's going to be in and around the first team squad. But if a young player in particular is going to sit on our bench, I'd rather they went out and got a little bit of experience. Mitchell could end up being League One's best centre half, and we recall him in January. We'll see how that one pans out. It could be something that comes back to bite us on the bum. It could be a very good move from the club to get him out and get him some first team football.
Absolutely. I'm just going to go back to a comment. This come through quite a while ago, and I did want to bring it up. And for the guys in the comments and yourself, Dan, I'm concerned that Longman and Campbell, as yesterday proved, will mean less game time for S8 and Amaku. Our two young pacey game changers dropped for two workman-like, typical Rowett signings. This is a very, very interesting point, because I think Amaku and SA need to be getting more game time. Certainly Amaku. I think SA does, but I think Amaku really is, with his pace, it's frightening pace. And it's something that teams in the Championship, after 60 minutes, big centre halves don't want someone who's absolutely lightning to be coming off the bench. I don't necessarily think Campbell's signing will impact the game time that SA and Amaku get, but I am slightly worried that Longman's might. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Campbell will. Let's not forget as well, Amaku's actually been involved with 50% of our league goals so far this season, which is I think that's quite an interesting point to make. Obviously, you touch on his pace, being frightening. Maybe the stats back that up. Longman has played in a variety of positions kind of throughout his career. He's played as a striker when he was younger, he's played as a wing back, played as a winger. So on paper, he's a brilliant player for Gary Rowett, who likes players who are versatile. I'm hoping Rowett's just brought him in maybe as a little bit of cover up top, because that is where Vogelsammer was, and maybe this offer from Germany came from Vogelsammer. Maybe they offered him a good wage, close to home, and he's gone, right, I think this is, I've had a crack in English football, hasn't quite worked out for me, I'm a bit far down the pecking order. I need to get going, and Rowett's maybe just brought him in to kind of boost the numbers up, because he obviously isn't in Hull's plans at the minute.
No. On the subject, for anybody that is remotely interested, Andreas Vogelsammer did make his debut for Hanover today. He come off the bench. They won 3-1. So the Voggy effect is fully alive.
Where's Joe when you need him?
I know. Out in Germany, he lives on. Chris Brown, is Wallace a reliable centre-back? I think not. I'd have to say I'm slightly in agreement there. I think the interesting comment you made there, Dan, about Longman being able to play a wing-back position, I think we could potentially see, if there are issues at the back, Wallace playing at centre-half or in one of the centre-half roles, and Longman actually playing in a wing-back role. That potentially is why he was brought in. I don't think you'd have seen maybe necessarily Voggy play as a wing-back, and that's perhaps why that move's come about. Yeah,
I feel more comfortable seeing Murray Wallace as a centre back, because obviously if you play wing back, especially in the way we're playing at the minute, you're out there on your own pretty much. If you make a mistake down that side, you're asking one of either the centre mids or the centre halves to come over and cover. Whereas if he's playing if he's playing as a centre back, he's got that cover. He'd probably play as a left hand side centre half. Cooper's probably our most comfortable middle centre half, although Hutchinson's obviously been playing there recently. So I think that's just kind of, I'd rather see him at centre half than full back or wing back, certainly rather than wing back, and full back absolute last resort.
Absolutely. Tony there seems to think that we can recall Alex Mitchell. Maybe we can. I'm not aware that deal's in place. Usually you can only call them back in January.
Very usually, break clause in January.
Chris Brown, I completely agree. I feel the centre backs, apart from Coops, his dad's army, past it. That's quite a funny comment. I tend to agree. I think with Jake Cooper as well. I think it's very much underestimated how much his contract situation perhaps was impacting him and having maybe playing on his mind. Is he going to move elsewhere? His agent was probably in his ear like, look, this is your options. This is what we're going to do. The fact that he's been tied down, I think that's going to make a real difference to him. It's just a shame that his injury record is very, very good, touch wood. All the others around him are the ones that are likely to now perhaps be sort of letting him down a little bit.
Yeah, and this is something that actually popped into my head the other night. Cooper has been, very much Mr. Reliable for us. We know he's going to be there since he signed pretty much week in, week out. But if we lose him, especially after the back of him signing a long-term contract extension, that's going to be obviously a massive, massive hole to fill. And I'm not obviously just talking about Cooper's height. I'm talking about, the presence obviously in our back line. There's been one consistent in our back line under both Rowett and Harris in a 4, in a 3, in a 5, however you want to say it. Cooper has pretty much been there in near enough every single championship game we've played.
Absolutely. I think it's the defence we build around him now. He's going to be the mainstay. He's great age.
He's committed. Yeah, I was about to say he's committed himself. If he looks after himself, and we need to play to strengths. We know obviously he's not the most mobile, but he's a strong centre half, very tall, going to win near enough everything in the air. Let's build the defence around him for the next few years, and maybe Okolie might end up being kind of the heir to Cooper. The way he's, Okolie's very similar in the way to Cooper, very well built, tall, left-footed. That kind of might be something that we end up seeing in a few years. Obviously, if them two go on to play together, I think that could end up being in a few years a fantastic centre-half partnership.
Absolutely. I'm going to sort of do 3 comments in one here because they're all based around pretty much Amaka, or 4 even. Amaka is the best out of the lot. He's different class, and Rowett needs to be careful. Otherwise, he's another that will get the hump and run his contract down. SA and Amaku will have a big impact this season. Don't be surprised if Amaku replaces Bradshaw. Longman looks like he'll replace Brian if he keeps being injured. From Big E, hi Big E, hope you're well. Is Amaku getting cotton walled up so teams don't work him out like Zian Fleming? And just one more on this. My worry is that SA and Amaku become institutionalized and lose their raw talent. Now, I agree with all of those comments. I maintain, I don't know, people might not necessarily agree with this. When Amaku was brought in, I think that there was potential plans for him to be involved a lot more in the first team last year than what he actually was. We got injured. That's just one of those things. And very similar to Tyler Bury, similar age, the raw pace, winger, and Bury clearly didn't work. And I think Amaku perhaps would have been given an opportunity. I'm not going to say that Amaku is going to be a better player than SA because I just don't believe that to be true. But I think that Amaku in this team is the real game changer at the moment. I think he really offers you something that we don't have elsewhere. The comment from, I think it was Tunbridge MFC, that Amaku replacing Bradshaw, I can see that. I can see that being the long-term plan, that Bradshaw will eventually be phased out and Amaku will take his spot. I'd like to think that Rowett won't kill the flair and attacking intent from SA and Amaku. Is that a worry, Dan? And do you think Amaku is perhaps, is he the one really that's going to be the game changer?
Anyone with pace like that with Amaku is going to be a valuable asset to any team. So let's just put that out there. I think he's a fantastic young player, and obviously it hasn't worked out for Bury. I think he's probably had his head a little bit elsewhere. That's probably why it hasn't worked out for him. Yeah. I think if Amaku keeps his head down, works hard, he's going to have a fantastic future. Whether that's with Millwall or not, obviously we hope that is with Millwall for the long term. I don't know whether he will come in and potentially replace Bradshaw, just because I think he probably is a little bit of a different player to Bradshaw. Obviously, Bradshaw, he wins a lot in the air. I don't think that's particularly going to be Amaku's strong point when he gets a little bit, older and potentially, looking at being more of a first team regular. But I think that's quite an interesting point on Amaku's pace. Obviously, towards the end of the window, it became in the last few days, it became clear that Ollie Burke was going to be available again from Werder Bremen. Obviously, he ended up at Birmingham now. There was a lot of talk that he might have been re-signing for us. And, I think the one thing I will say about Ollie Burke was that he had that pace that we desperately lacked at times. And, he was a bit of an outlet for us on the wing. And in a way, I'm a little bit happy we probably didn't re-sign Ollie Burke because I feel like Ollie Burke would have been more of a hindrance to Amaku's game time than Longman might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of I'm going to come back to one, and it absolutely it's probably the best comment of the night for me because it's going to lead me right off into a rant. But yeah, I'm sorry. Murray Wallace has been a decent player for us, but he absolutely must not play left back, left wing back. I'm not sure I've seen a worse passer of the ball. I have to agree. I think if you're playing him at left back, left wing back, we are massively struggling. Murray was past it last season, and he fast right wingers just ran past him. The fact he's still an ever present says it all. You do have to agree. There's been other comments on SA and Amaku. SA is quality, but Amaku has developed physically, which makes him better at this point. I think that's a really, really good point. I think SA still needs to. He's still growing. He's still developing. He probably needs to bulk up a little bit, whereas Amaku has already hit that point. So the physical side of the game definitely.
I think that comes from Amaku playing. He was playing men's football in Ireland, wasn't he?
Yeah,
playing a lot of football for Shamrock in Europe as well, which is obviously a fantastic experience and learning curve for a player of his age. So that's probably why Amaku might be. I think they're probably both kind of first team ready, and they will definitely make an impact on the squad this season. But I feel like Amaku might be slightly more ready than SA is at the minute, and that's not me taking away anything at all from Roman SA. I think SA probably will go on to be the better player out of the two. But I think right now Amaku might be a slightly more important game-changing player for us.
Absolutely. And now it's time for my rant. And Chris, I absolutely agree with you 100% with this comment. Why don't we sign players that specialise in one position instead of a jack-of-all-trades players? Chris, you have hit the nail on the head. The one word I hate in football, and Gary Rowett uses it pretty much with every player that we sign, is utility. I don't want utility players. I don't want someone to come in and go, he can play here, he can do this, he can do that, he can make the tees, he can, the kit man, Lurch. Lurch is the utility.
That's Lurch's job, isn't
it? That's what Millwall are. We just have a utility. Everyone behind the scenes, everybody is utility. They run the ticket office, they run this, they run that. I don't like having players that can play in multiple positions. This might contradict to a certain extent. When I say I don't like it, you can get one or two because sometimes it's handy to have a couple that can fill in if necessary, but you cannot build a squad of 6, 7, 8 players that can play in 3 different positions. It doesn't work. I completely agree. I think we should be signing players that specifically play in a certain position, but unfortunately with our budget, it's something that we do kind of have to get used to, but it is very, very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it does have its perks. I think there's players in this squad potentially. And, obviously last season, I think obviously Callum Stiles was probably the main player last season. One game he'd be left back, next game he'd be right wing, next game he'd be centre mid. I would love to see us obviously sign, players to play in their outright position. But I do think having flexibility is a good thing. I'm not just saying let's sign players for their fixed positions. I think having flexibility in the squad is a good thing, but it would be good to see players play in their natural positions. I think obviously the few you can kind of get away with is players that can play as a wing back and a full back. I feel like that's probably the easiest one to get away with, and there's probably a few others, especially the way the modern game's going. But no, I do agree with you. It would be good to sign players and play them in their actual positions.
Yeah, and just an interesting comment that's coming off the back of SA here and from MFC for Life. Sunderland are playing a 16-year-old. This talk of player, specifically SA, being too young or not bulky enough is nonsense. I don't think we were saying that he's not. He shouldn't be playing. I think there definitely should be a role to play for SA. But in a direct comparison between SA and Amaku is physically. He's further on in his development than what SA is. So I think he is just more suited for the physical style. If we do knock it long, I'm not saying Amaku is going to go around winning headers, but I think he'd be more than happy to throw his weight around and try and, try and use his size to his advantage as well as his pace. I think they're two different players. Esse's not going to. I don't think Esse's going to sprint past players. He's just going to glide past them, take it past them with skill, probably play in a different position. And I agree. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're good enough, you play or you get game time. But I think specifically between Esse and Amaku is obviously more developed than what Romain Esse is. Connor Passford, only one player that does it better than anyone. That's Camavinga. Shame he's over 70 million. Yeah. Fantastic footballer. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be signing anybody from Real Madrid anytime soon. But you never know. You never know. Talking of utility players, Shackleton looked very good yesterday at fullback. Yeah, he's been given an opportunity at Leeds, and good luck to him. I don't wish. Well, when I say good luck to him, in a couple of Sundays' time.
I'd say good luck to him other than the 17th of September and 16th of March, I think it is. You know, I never had anything against Shackleton. I feel like he was probably a little bit unlucky, to be honest, to not get maybe as much game time as he did, especially considering when we signed him last summer, the reason the deal took a little bit longer to get over the line was because we actually wanted to put a buy clause in there. And then he ended up playing so little. His agent even came out way before the end of his loan and said, he won't be signing for Millwall because he's not playing enough. So, you know.
And you can't argue that.
No. You know, I said it many times last season. I don't know why Shackleton isn't playing maybe instead of Danny McNamara a little bit more. So, you know, I guess that's just football. Rowett obviously, you know, has his preference. We don't see training. We don't know what happens in training. It was just a little bit confusing to me that we brought in Shackleton, who, you know, was a proven championship player with experience, promotion under his belt, still a good age with that buy option. And now he's gone back to Leeds. And, you know, other than that penalty against Salford in the week, he's actually looked like he's had a very good start to the season for him.
Yeah, and also with him as well, the fact that Danny McNamara did come under a little bit of pressure towards the back end of the season. You know, Shackleton was more than happy and more than comfortable playing at fullback. He is for Leeds. So very strange what happened there. And as Alex said,
I think he actually played left back as well yesterday for him.
There you go. So it could have been an option either side. Cresswell's on the bench for them as well. Yeah, look, we could do a whole piece on that. I think it's insane that Leeds are not playing, and they've tied him down. They obviously see something there, but just absolutely stupidity. Luke Smith, he's not too young. He just needs a season around the first team. Also, what is his position? I'm assuming you're talking about SA. Correct me if I'm wrong.
What are their positions? Because I think that is, you know, a good question. I think Emakhu came to us more as a striker, and he's probably playing out on the wing, which I think is, you know, I think he probably looks a bit better out on the wing with that pace. I'm not saying that pace could be good up top, but I think it could be better utilised, possibly out wide. SA, for me, possibly is the slightly more interesting one. I do see him maybe playing a bit more as a number 10, having such good technical ability. And, you know, I'm not saying he's slow by any means, but certainly not as quick as Emakhu. Maybe playing in that position in the pocket of space just off the strikers might be his best position.
I think so. I think he is nailed on to play at number 10 in his career. I don't think he's ever going to make it as an out-and-out winger. But that's nothing against him. I just don't think that's really where you'll see the best of him. You want him on the ball, turning on the ball, you know, making things happen. And I think in that 10 role definitely is where he should be. A couple of interesting comments there. Kiefer Moore would have been the icing on the cake. I honestly think had Kiefer Moore if they got that deal over the line, our transfer window would have been fair. It would have been. It's been okay. You know, I still don't think.
Give it 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, with Kiefer Moore, I would have gone up to about and then with a defender, I would have said a 10. Yeah, absolutely. Chris Brown again. I don't know too much about this, but what really bugs me is Joe Wright being loaned out and has yet to play a minute of game time. Should have kept him trained with the first team. I completely agree. I do agree.
That, you know, listen, I think we gave a bit of praise to the club for getting the young players out onto loan deals. It's a little bit of a difference, you know, from what's happened in the past few years. The big difference is obviously Okoloi, he's gone out, he's playing regularly. Nana Boateng, he's playing pretty regularly for Woking. Joe Wright's just gone and sat on the bench. I'd rather, you know, if the young players are going to go out and play regularly, then let's get them out and playing regularly. You know, Wright is one of the older, younger players, if that kind of makes sense. He's 22 years old now. He does really need to start playing pretty regular football, if I'm being completely honest. Obviously, I imagine if he hasn't really played anything at all, the break clause will probably be activated for that in January, and he might be sent off either to another League Two team or maybe into the National League. I imagine obviously Salford is still in the Carabao Cup, and obviously going well in the league so far this season. So I can't see him changing their main goalkeeper for either that. The only games he might get for them is in the Pizza Cup, which, you know,
it's not enough.
It's not enough, especially when you consider as well you have other under-21 teams in there, which, you know, arguably isn't really much of a difference to what he's been playing. So, you know, if he isn't going to play, let's get him back and let's get him out on another loan where he is going to play.
Yeah, look, I'm also under the impression, and I'm not sure if I'm right with this, but I think Salford's captain is their goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So,
he had the armband on again in the Leeds game in the week. So
yeah, I just, yeah, it's a baffling move. You'd think that the club would put into place that they'd get some game time, and not just going to go and sit on the bench. It just seems a very, very odd move. I'm not sure that's come up, is it? If we're winning, then Rowett should bring on SA and Amako, as pace would suit his tactics perfectly. I completely agree.
He did do that against Stoke, to be fair. Brought Amako on,
and
the game a little bit.
Middlesbrough was the
Middlesbrough obviously the pinnacle of it, wasn't it?
Bring SA on for Fleming and Amako on for one of the two strikers after 60, 70 minutes would suit me. SA needs people making runs in front of him that he can pick out. Again, completely agree. That's exactly where he needs to be playing. And I do think where Fleming is still considered probably the main man by Gary Rowett, and he is still going to get an opportunity. He will play against Leeds, we assume, providing fitness and whatnot. But I do think it will get to a point where, you know, SA is probably going to be knocking on the door and sort of going, well, you know, he's not really doing much, so let me have an opportunity. And I certainly wouldn't be against that. Another interesting comment here from Alex. I felt Tom King never got a fair crack with us. No, I don't think he did either. But again, it's a case of sometimes with goalkeepers, they're at the wrong club at the wrong time, and that's just how it was.
I do partially agree with this comment, but also I kind of look at what's happened to his career, obviously since he's left us, and you know he ended up kind of turning into a little bit of a League Two journeyman, going around clubs a little bit. Obviously now he's at Wolves, but he's their third choice, and he's probably getting quite a handsome pay packet for not playing for Wolves. So, you know, best of luck to him. He might in a few years go, I want to kind of play regular football again and get another League One, League Two move.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to come on to a couple of different things before we start to sort of wrap up the show. First of all, 5 league games, 7 points from 15. We've played Middlesbrough away, we've played Birmingham away, and we've played Norwich away. So 3 tough away fixtures in that first 15. Guys, in the comments, please feel free to give me your ratings as well. Dan, if I was to ask you our start of the season out of 10, what are you saying?
Points wise, I'd probably be pretty happy. Performance wise, not too happy. I think that would probably be my best summary. But you know, I've kind of always said, you know, I can kind of deal with watching shit football if we're kind of getting results. Obviously, my thoughts will kind of turn if we continue to play shit football and don't get results. At the minute, I'm probably still slightly more leaning towards Rowett out than Rowett in, but there's a long way to go. Obviously, I don't think James is going to be rushing into any reactions at this point in time, especially obviously given how loyal his dad was to managers. So, you know, I think it's been an okay kind of steady start to the season. We haven't, you know, sent out. I don't think we've achieved our full potential yet, but I think there's enough kind of signs there for it to be a decent enough season. I don't think we'll be looking over our shoulders. Let's put it that way.
And we're currently sat. I believe I'm just getting it up now. We're sat 12.
12. Oh,
bang on. Yeah, just inside the top half. Obviously, lots of teams on 7 points like us. Preston lead the way, which I'm actually quite surprised at.
Yeah, I think they've had a good start. Fair play to them.
Very good start. I think, personally, I think you were quite right what you said there. The performances haven't been great. Middlesbrough aside, and the first half against Bristol City, it's been a bit of a tough watch.
I'm going to change the first half for Bristol City to that 35 minutes v Stoke.
Well, yeah, because the first 10 minutes. Sorry, not Bristol City. I meant Stoke. The Stoke first half.
35. I don't think first half yesterday we were terrible. That kind of probably goes into the middle of kind of the terrible and the good performances so far, just as distinctly average, to be completely honest. You know.
Chris Brown there. This is a great comment. Borough bottom of the league. That was one of our easier ways. Yeah, well, they started very similar last year and turned it around.
Well, they sacked their manager, didn't they? So let's see if they do that. Well, there you go, Stephen. I'm going to put a question to you now because you was at both games like myself. What was the worst performance, Norwich away or Reading at home in the Carabao?
Oh God, I don't know.
Well, I mean, they were both shit. Let's put that out there. So,
I would say this is going to sound very odd because I know people are going to go, "Oh, it's the Carabao Cup. It doesn't matter." I actually think that result against Reading did more damage than good because we got hammered by 4, which that doesn't happen at the Den. You know, we then went on to lose against Bristol City. We then went on to lose against Norwich, and I think it really did damage, and it got the fans on Rowett's back. So I think that Reading result, whilst Norwich was absolutely awful, and it was, I think that Reading result was just shocking, absolutely shocking.
I'm going to agree with you there. I think, you know, Norwich, they're a decent team. But, you know, obviously we didn't go up there and give a good account of ourselves, but we was playing Reading's kids at home in the, you know, that comment on screen there from Connor, we was playing Reading's under-21 team practically.
Yeah.
That's the more concerning thing. It was, you know, a horrific performance with it wasn't quite our full strength team, but a very good team out on the pitch that night. So, you know, I think that one has to be worse for me, but, you know, neither of them were very good performances at all. I'm hoping we don't see many more of them this season, because if we put in more of them kind of performances, we will start to look over our shoulder.
Absolutely. To echo Dan's point wise, given the fixtures, not bad, but the football is atrocious. So I look past the results and think thoroughly disappointing. We have better players than what we've shown. Jonathan, this season so far, we're looking too one-dimensional and predictable. Opposition managers know exactly what they're going to face. I completely agree with both of those points. One that I am going to come back to, MFC for life, and Dan, we'll both answer this, but I'm going to come to you first because it's easy for me to put you under pressure first.
I was going to ask you this question, actually.
MFC for life, how many points do you anticipate we get in the 3 games after the break? Leeds, Rotherham and West Brom. And now I'm under the impression, I think you touched on it earlier, that we play all of them in a week.
Yes,
I believe it's Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday.
Yeah, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. So that's going to be a tough ask. 3 games in 6 days. How many points do I think we get? Well, we don't usually lose to Leeds at the Den, touch wood.
You've said it now.
I'm sitting at a wooden desk, mate. So I've done it. So let's say we'll get a point there. Rotherham. I mean, we beat them last season. I'd like to think we can beat them again. So I'm going to say we'll win that one. Probably going to say a loss away at West Brom, but maybe a draw. I can't see us getting any. If we get more than 5 points, I'll be a very happy man.
It's hard to look past that. I mean, there's a couple of comments here, and this is going to buy me a little bit of time before I actually give my answer, which is great. Luke's 4 points from Luke, 7 points from Alex, 4 points. 4 points at most from MFC for life.
You know what? I'm trying to shake off the negative Dan nickname, so I'm going to say 5.
Okay, all right. Pushing the boat out. Chris Brown, Leeds lost, Rotherham win, West Bromwich Albion draw, 4 points. Do you know what? The Leeds game, anything can happen because it's Leeds, isn't it? You know, the expectation, the crowd. You know, we do have a good record. You know, it's on the telly. We do have a record.
Bradshaw might, do his thing.
I'm going to go with exactly what Oliver has just messaged into the chat. I'm going to go with 6 points. I think we'll win 2 of the games. I don't.
Which 2?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that.
I was about to say though, knowing Millwall, we will beat Leeds and West Brom.
Yeah, probably. That's probably the safest bet if you wanted to go with 2 wins. I'm going to go on record. One of the games I think we will beat West Brom. I just don't see them being a threat. I really don't.
They did lose to Huddersfield yesterday, didn't they? It was a weird. Well, was it a weird result? I don't know. We'll see, won't we? But that's one that caught my eye this weekend.
I'm not going to just yet. I need more time to think about how we're going to get on against Leeds because we're bound to do a prediction and a preview of that. Tunbridge MFC, we beat Leeds, lose against Rotherham and draw with West Brom. That's the Millwall way. I mean, to be honest with you, what I said, if you were any gambling man or woman, that is beat Leeds, lose against Rotherham and draw with West Brom. Find the odds on that because that is probably absolutely nailed on to be the scenario. Look, I think Leeds and Rotherham are home fixtures. I think you have to be looking at winning your home games. There's no excuses there. Obviously, Rotherham should be the easier fixture on paper, but as we know, Millwall don't particularly do it the easy way. I think Dan, as he's looking at his phone, is probably looking for the odds on that set. Oh, okay. But if any of the listeners, if you can do that, please do. Another topic I wanted to cover just before we sort of look at wrapping this up and letting you all crack on with your Sunday evenings. The Millwall Podcast Fantasy League
this is something I wanted to discuss.
Is very much up and running. Thank you to everybody that has joined.
I'm just going to get a quick count on the numbers quickly in that league. So we're currently on 87 people in the league.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Yeah, please do. At the moment, Alfie Irvin is currently leading the way, or jointly leading the way with Joe. I haven't got a surname on that. I don't know who that is. Please get in touch to let us know. And Joe Culverson is currently in third, 3 points behind. From the panelists, there's a few of us in it. Dan is leading the way from the panelist. He's currently in seventh. I don't want to talk about it anymore because he's actually beating me and he doesn't even bother with it. So Omar is currently in.
He's matched me this week. I feel upset now. You said he doesn't even play. He's got as many points as me this week.
20th. I'm in 24th, and Ben's actually just in behind. Yeah, Joe Zampa, whose idea this was actually, is I don't actually know where Joe is.
He's bringing up the pack near the back somewhere, isn't he?
But yeah, so Alfie Irvin, Joe, I don't know who your second name is. Your team name is What More Do You Want? I like it. That's very clever. And Joe Culverson leading the way. Thanks for joining that. If you want to get involved, drop us a message. We'll send you the link. It's just a little bit of fun.
I'll get an update on Joe's position for us very quickly.
Yeah, and on this. Now,
Joe is currently sitting in 43rd place out of 87. So a bit like Mills, slap bang in mid-table.
Yeah, but if you'd like to go over to, I think his Twitter is at Mr. Zampa7 on Twitter, and give him a little bit of stick for having a stinker on the Fantasy League at the moment. It's Big E, how I'm holding you up at the being bottom. Big E, you need to sort it out. Make some transfers, mate. Get involved.
Get Haaland in, mate. That's probably the best piece of advice I can give you.
Yeah, shouts to anyone stupid enough like me to not captain Haaland this week. Yeah, well, that's just silly. You just got to stick with it. 1 week it's not going to work.
Trouble, yeah.
One week it is. That's a little bit of fun. We're enjoying it.
But the big talking point, which you probably would have seen the poll on the page last night, is it acceptable to have West Ham players in your draft squad? Now, I'm of the opinion that I will not do it. I didn't do it all of last season. I won't do it this season. I really couldn't give a shit if West Ham signed Haaland. He won't be going into my team if they did. So I'm very much of the opinion no West Ham players in the team. Stephen, on the other hand, has been using Jared Bowen since the start of the season.
Yeah. Now, thanks for throwing me under the bus. And for anybody that knows me, or if you don't, you're going to know a little bit about me as a person now, not just as the person who talks rubbish on this podcast. I am incredibly competitive, and I don't care what it takes to win or to try and beat Dan and Joe and anyone else in the fantasy league. I am putting in players that are going to get me points. This is the first year I never had Palace and West Ham players. I never did it, but I'm at the point now where I just don't care. I don't care. He's in and he's getting me points, and that's the main thing. If he gets injured, he'll come out, and that's that. And he's the only one that I would have considered.
The only Palace player I might turn a blind eye to at one point this season, if he starts playing well, is a Bear Eze, just because of the War Academy.
if you put in,
okay, that's fine.
no,
I won't, no Palace players. I haven't had one in there since the start of the season. There'll be no Palace players in my team either. I'm quite happy to do that. But
that's fine.
I'm going to hold the poll results up now to the camera. So is it acceptable to have West Ham players in the draft? We have yes, 31%, no, 69%.
I mean, honestly, guys in the comments, if you're still here, thank you for persisting. Obviously, we've come off of the Millwall talk for a while now. But if it's that big of a deal, should I transfer him out? If it's that big, no, Dan, you don't count. No, guys in the comments, we'll do this for another sort of maybe 5-10 minutes or so. Yes or no? Should I transfer Jared Bowen out of my fantasy team for when the
and also while we're on the topic,
break?
While we're on the topic, should Joe also transfer out Areola? Because I'm not just going to throw you under the bus here. Joe isn't on here tonight, but he also does have Areola in his team.
Yeah, that's true. But Joe's not here, so I'm the one that will cop all the abuse and stick. So fantastic.
I'm just going to check. Is anyone else? No, Ben doesn't. Does Omar doesn't either. So there you go.
That's fine. Look, we'll let the people decide. Before we go, gonna ask just one more. Just ask a couple more questions, just Millwall related. Dan. We'll start with first. Did you notice that George Evans didn't make the matchday squad for Wrexham yesterday?
He was on the bench, actually.
Oh, was he? Oh, I thought I saw it. Okay, all right.
No, he did make the bench yesterday. And I think that's to kind of almost be expected with players that come in 24 hours before you play a game and probably haven't had a training session. I have no doubt he's going to do very well at League 2 level. I think he'll be a fantastic player down there. And I'm just going to say yet again, I'm disappointed in Millwall for not managing to get a fee for a player, because Wrexham are a very wealthy club at the moment. I'm sure we even just 100k would have sat better with me, rather than just saying,
just let him go,
let's rip up his contract and he can go and sign, for Wrexham. It's a great move for him. It's a club on the up. He gets to move a lot closer to home, and he probably picks up, I would imagine, probably a salary pretty similar to what he's on with us, and will play regular football. So I think
absolutely
it's like that for him. But I just can't think as to why the club haven't got a fee for him, nor with Andreas Vogelsammer, because obviously they put that clause in Vogelsammer's deal to get an extra year out of him. And what was the point? We may as well just not put that clause in there and just gone at the end of the season. Vogie, thank you very much for your efforts, but we're not going to keep you on.
No, I quite agree. Luke Smith, keep Bowen, transfer Areola, so that means Joe's in the wrong. Happy days. Chris Brown, this is a great comment. If I blocked all players from clubs I hate, my team would get relegated from the Conference South. So, yeah, Oliver, Evans, freeze wages. I'm happy that was not going to change the game for us. Yeah, the wages. I actually think on this, that Evans and Vogie were released on the basis that their wages were probably higher earners, and I think that had something to do with being tied in for us going for Kiefer Moore. And unfortunately, they freed up the wages, but the Kiefer Moore deal never happened. Guys, we've been running now for around about an hour and a half, so we're probably gonna.
Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly say, obviously me and Stephen are on here. Mickey just put something in group chat from Tricky Ricky on Twitter saying that this will probably be something. I'm sure there'll be plenty of content going up over the international break. More kind of chats maybe like these. If you guys obviously want lives, let us know over the international break. But one comment here is he was at the game yesterday and he thought Billy Mitchell had a good game and will be a big player for us, but people are slagging him off. What's our thoughts?
I like Billy Mitchell. I think he was well on his way to winning Player of the Season last year before his injury, which took him out for a while. I think his position, now there's competition, and I think the fact that we're so reliant on our midfield to be runners and to be, impacting the game, I think if he is off of his game,
it shows.
It shows, and now there's competition. I think he's certainly going to have to be on it, the majority of the time. The whole Millwall boy, nobody is above criticism at the club. I don't think if you're not performing very well, but I think Billy Mitchell is at the moment doing enough to warrant being in the starting team, but we are going to probably need to see a bit more from him over the long term.
Yeah, I would say in particular last season when he was on his good run of form, it very much felt like if Billy Mitchell played well, we played well, and I certainly felt his loss when he had to come out of the team. I think, Leonard and Saville, when they played together in the pivot last season, I think they're both good players, but very similar. I think Mitchell was brilliant at kind of, getting the ball and kind of getting us moving again. Obviously, I think it's a lot harder for him to do that when we're playing with less people at the top, and it does make his job harder. So, I like him, and I think he's still well worthy of his spot in the starting 11. But as Stevens just said, there's going to be a lot of competition for midfield spots this season, and I'm sure, obviously, playing, as we've just discussed with our next 3 games coming up in 6 days, I'm sure there'll probably be a lot of rotation in there as well.
Absolutely. Luke, on a night shift, I needed this. Thanks, gents. Always, thank you for watching and commenting and getting involved. The live shows that we do, me, Mickey, Dan, Ben joins in, Joe, Chris, Omar, all of us, they're interactive. We can't do this without you guys commenting, sending us messages. Even if you want to give us abuse and stick, we don't mind. We're happy to put up with it and
take your frustration out from watching Millwall and us.
Yeah, do whatever you need to. We appreciate all the comments, all the support. So thank you for. I know you're on a night shift, so it probably helped you as you say. But thank you for sticking with us. Comment up there. Billy Mitchell is not for me. Just doesn't impact games at either end of the pitch. If you're going to play CDM, then play CDM. He constantly gets caught the wrong side of the ball. I do think there is an argument that positionally in a defensive area, there is possibly a little bit of work to do. Again, over the next, I wouldn't be surprised if Mitchell doesn't play in the next one or the middle game or whatever, because of the fact that the games come around thick and fast. But I do agree, perhaps positionally, he probably does need a little bit of work. Oliver, would the national break be good? I'm assuming that's meant to be for us or bad for momentum, or would it be good to regroup and go again? I'll be honest with you.
I'm leaning towards the second option there.
Yeah, I think so. I don't really think we have an awful lot of momentum. It's
a big statement to say we've got momentum after a win where in the end we kind of had to scrape it through a little bit, and then a 1-1. Draw, a draw, which was a decent point, but to call that momentum would probably be a bit overkill for me.
Yeah, possibly. David coming in towards the end, row it out. We're not good enough. Look, I don't agree. I must admit, I don't think getting rid of him at this point. I think that after the Norwich game, I was fuming, and I think it was time to really make some change. Since then, we've picked up 4 from 6. We'll see how the next phase of the season goes.
I think he's bought himself some time with this 4 from 6, and obviously we know he probably isn't going to walk away from the job. He'll probably try and hold on for a payoff, because that's what most managers do. It's not anything against Gary Rowett. Obviously, Holloway did it when he was with us. So I think these 4 from 6 have bought him time. And as I said earlier, I don't think James is going to rush into any knee-jerk kind of reaction decisions, especially given how loyal his dad was. But obviously, James is his own person, so we will just wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. He's come back in. We were lucky against Stoke. That was a poor performance yesterday and a poor goal to give away yesterday. Sorry, lads. No, look. Listen, as I just said earlier, this show is nothing, especially the live ones, is nothing without you guys, your opinions. Every fan that watches the games, that pay their money, that whether it's on a stream or whatever, this is an opportunity for us to have a discussion about it. I agree. We did get lucky against Stoke, and perhaps it was a poor goal to concede yesterday. I think 7 points from our opening 5 games, I don't think is a bad return. And I think Rowett, as Dan said, has perhaps bought himself a little bit of time. He's still in a position where it is very, thin ice. It can easily turn either way. But the last 2 for me have certainly bought him just a little bit more time. Obviously, next Saturday or next weekend it is the international break, so we don't have a fixture for us to dissect and run through. As Dan touched on earlier, there should be and will be some content going out, Mill related. Perhaps do another live chat to perhaps talk about the season so far and do a little bit of a sort of a summary on that.
There'll probably be an injury update on Sean Hutchinson by then, I would imagine, as well, among other things. Obviously, there's not just obviously the Leeds game to look forward to. There's 3 games in a week, so I'm sure there might end up being kind of combined into one show. So I'm sure we'll be looking ahead to them this time next week.
Absolutely. Chris, back on Twitter X now. Must behave myself. You're in the Joe Club. He was banned as well.
Joe was banned as well. So you two can take lessons from each other.
Points are points. Absolutely agree. Lee, we have picked up 4 from 6, but the football has been shit.
That's Gary Rowett ball. Yeah,
that is Gary Rowett. And unfortunately, as Dan said, and I think we know, he's not going to walk away.
Is Gary Rowett's contract up at the end of this season? I think it might be, but we'll wait and see what kind of communication, if there is any question, if it might be something that the journalist puts to him, is his contract up? I don't know. I thought it was up at the end of last season. There was no news about an extension from the club, so I assume it might be up at the end of this season. So if anyone does know, obviously we'll be grateful for any kind of help in the comments. But I think it might be his last year in contract now. Don't take that as concrete, but it'd be interesting if it is, and maybe what the club's plan onwards from here is.
He might have been on a rolling contract. I'm not sure though. That might be something for us to. Perhaps David's just come and he signed a 2-year deal last season, so perhaps this is the last year. Maybe we'll try and fact check that for you, guys. Thank you very much for spending your Sunday evening with us. We obviously enjoy doing it, but we really appreciate that you guys have spent your time with us. Just a couple of final things from us before we wrap up. Okay, Tony's just asked another question. How will we set up against Leeds? I can't imagine us setting up against Leeds any differently than what we have been in the last 2 games. Personnel may change dependent on injuries and the situation with Denore in the middle, because I think he was brought in to play. He's not brought in to just fill the squad. He was brought in to play.
Obviously, the 3 question marks will be Denore. Hopefully, he'll be fit by the international break going. Hutchinson and Brian, if them 2 are back, I feel like that'll be the main kind of question marks over the team. Otherwise, I can see it being a pretty similar lineup. As I said, I may be tempted to chuck Imaku in from the start and maybe kind of play him as a left striker to maybe drift on wide, possibly over to Luke Ayling, because I really don't think Luke Ayling's much cop. I think Imaku against him could have a field day, but that might be something Rowett kind of saves for the 60th, 70th minute mark. So that's just my opinion, but I can't see him changing it.
No, I don't either. And as David said there, no one likes us. We don't care. We are Millwall. We always stick together. I hope we get better within the coming weeks. I agree. I absolutely agree. I think we probably it's been a bit of a roller coaster already. I don't think some of it's been unjust, some of the criticism, but I think hopefully we can all get together, get to that Leeds game, and hopefully kick start from there. That's been it for tonight's live show. Again, thank you as always. A couple of just final bits from us. Me personally, I'm looking to bring back the Who Are You series. Last year we did some interviews with a few of our listeners. The panelists did it, Dan himself, me, Ben. We all took a turn of answering the 20 questions about your time supporting Millwall. If you would like to do it, please get in contact with the pod or me directly at SPJ91 on Twitter. Just drop me a message. We'll sort out a recording and get that done, or drop the pod a message. We're looking to revive that. So any ages, whether you've been supporting the club for 6 months or 60 years, whatever, please feel free to get involved. Follow us across Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. It really does help us out to get in front of more fans, and it does do us a massive favour. TikTok, we're also on there. Instagram, the absolutely, with any support on any of the social channels would be very much appreciated. And just to end on, Jonathan, always, I'm assuming that was meant to be love your show. I live 600 miles away. This is exactly it. There are fans that are far across the world that might not necessarily get to the Den or get to games anymore. So, it's great for us to be reaching, whether you're local or you're a million miles away. It's great to have you on
and
involved.
also as well, we're grateful if anyone, if there's a topic you guys want us to talk about,
Yeah,
we're more than happy to talk about it. So as always, when we're on these lives, obviously, pop them in the comments. When we're not on lives, obviously, if there's anything that you guys think that we should be discussing on the podcast, whether that's the beer choice at the den or the personnel we have in the playing squad, drop the pod a comment and we'll be sure to get round to it.
absolutely. We do read them all. Luke, I'm not sure what you mean not on Twitter. We are very active on Twitter. That's where we do a lot of our...
Maybe it means it's called X now.
Oh, okay, yeah, X. Yeah, it's to be politically correct, I suppose, where it's X now rather than Twitter. We do have a community group on there as well. We'll post a link out, and basically Twitter, you can get a lot of other comments come up, followers and different clubs, different bits and pieces you're not interested in. We have a group. It's purely Millwall related, so you'll only see Millwall related tweets. We'll post a link out, send a request, and one of us will accept it. Chris, this will be the last one that we come to. Any chance of getting more notice on YouTube when these shows come up? We will aim to do that. I'm not sure how it necessarily works. We schedule them in at a specific time, but we will certainly look at getting a little bit more notice out there so you don't miss them. The show will be live on YouTube straight away. We don't edit it, so you can go back if you missed the start of it. You can go back and watch it. At the beginning, you will get to see Mickey's face, so there's a little bit of a treat for you all if you have joined us late. But that's been Dan. I'm Stephen. That's been this That Millwall podcast again for the Sunday night call-in. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll be back next week for some more Millwall content.